Test 1, 2, check, check, check. Okay, we're going to see if we have camera at all. Ooh, I got an echo. Let me turn this off. Okay. Whoa. Okay, can everybody hear this?
Yeah, I think you're in.
Okay, hopefully it's working. And let me just try to figure out one more problem with the camera. Test. Just doing a double check. For those online, before we get started, since we had the power out and about 8,500 homes, including our business, was out, and we're about to get going, just wanted to know, can you guys hear me? If you can put it in the chat, if I can get a yes or a yeehaw or anything, just letting you know. Good, I got a yes. Sweet, you guys can hear. We got one more thing we need to fix, and I think we are good to go, so just hang tight just for a few more minutes. Thanks. And I'll take this one.
Dude, these are so cool. Check, check.
Check one. Okay, I think we are ready to go. One more check online to see if people can hear us and if we got everything good to go. Let's see. Let's go for a chat. I got a yes and a yes and a remote yes. James, I think we're good.
Okay.
So let's get. We're having one problem with the camera. The camera, we can't zoom it, and I've been trying to figure this out, but it's just not working. So you guys are just going to have to get kind of a long view, unless something fixes itself between now and the time we get going. But let's go ahead and get started. For those of you online, hey, good to see you. Good to have you here. So we are, just to let you guys know, that's a little too loud. Let me bring it down.
Yeah, and there's a couple up here too. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Okay, check 1, 2. There, I think the feedback's gone. Okay, so we are growing online tremendously. So I don't know if you guys know it. Hey, good to see you. So we launched our 5-day preparedness challenge about 2 weeks ago, and we haven't even turned on the engines yet. But my phone. I think this is the guy who's going to fix the camera. Say hi to everyone real quick.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and do like a. This is interesting. This is what preparedness is all about, right? Being able to go with the flow and pivot, and that's the key. So tonight's topic is home security, specifically with consideration for we've got upcoming holidays stuff. So the theft rates start going up, burglary rates start going up. They're already really high in America right now. We're in kind of an epidemic that people are a little bit unaware of, especially for not just break-ins, but invasions, home invasions, and without any societal disruptions. So then we start mixing in other factors like what we saw tonight, right? The whole grid goes down in an entire city from one transformer. So all of South Jordan up to Bangor Highway, what'd they say, 85?
15,000.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Not to mention all the roads, traffic lights, things like that. So it gives us a little bit of a flavor, a little bit of a taste of what can happen when we have a societal disruption. So those are the context of what we'll be talking about some stuff, but it just kind of reemphasizes that we've got tech that we're relying on,
Totally.
And so what do we have? Redundant systems, right? We've got analog.
Yeah.
We've got lighting, so we can still make this happen, but that's what it's about. Being prepared is just
creative
staying
too.
adaptive, right?
Creative, adaptive. That's a perfect word. And a lot of people will ask, like, what's the worst emergency situation, long-term emergency situations? Because obviously there's some really bad short-term ones, right? That can happen in a car crash or whatever else, right? But long-term emergencies, if I had to rate them, I would say long-term power outage is number one. Okay, and you guys understand that if the power goes out like it did tonight, and we're starting late, and the congressional study said that up to 90% of the United States would be dead within 1 year. Okay, and people don't understand how dependent we are on electricity to pump water to your house for flushing toilets. So people don't start getting dysentery and get really sick over a lot of crazy diseases in animals and rodents and everything else. For medicine, for food, for gas pumping, for you name it. Electricity runs the whole world. All our businesses, this business would be dead in a second because I depend on the internet completely, on my computers completely. And so I would say that's number one. Number two, in my mind, and I'd be curious if you have any other thoughts on this, but my mind, a really like a real bad pandemic, not like the one we had. Okay, if we had a really, really bad pandemic, like 1 out of 5 people dying, the government wouldn't have to shut down my business. I would shut down my business. I'm not going to put my friends, my team in jeopardy just because I want to make $1. Okay, there's just no way. And so if you can imagine that, the whole world would shut down, including eventually it would do the same thing that electricity if you got all the electricity gone. Beyond that, I would say that financial collapses, war, stuff like that are below, right below those. But there's a lot of crazy things that can and probably will happen someday. But the big one we got to test out tonight is
power outage.
Power outage.
Right.
And part of me got excited because I like this stuff. you know, and I thought maybe we'll sell a lot of flashlights tonight, right? But there's going to be a day. I mean, there's too many reasons for power to go out. If you understand LPTs, large power transformers, it doesn't take much to take out an LPT. And if you take an LPT out, we're not going to get our power on for a long time because each one of those are custom made for the area. It takes about 1 year to make it. Okay, 1 year. Okay, 90%. Remember that.
And guess where they're made?
Overseas.
Not in here. Brazil.
Yep.
Brazil's one of the biggest
overseas,
providers of LPTs.
Brazil, Europe, and there's a couple big suppliers, and we wouldn't see that stuff. And there's no way. I mean, we can replace that many.
And they couldn't handle the demand.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And there's no way that the FEMA's going to come in and save a whole nation, right? And you talk about solar flares. I'm just going blank. My brain's really tired. The
Coronal mass
CMEs,
Yeah,
okay,
CMEs,
coronal
yeah.
mass ejections, and then you also have the
Well, and that's not even starting to bridge the gap
Oh.
into intentional EMP type
Cy-
things. and
cyber
stuff like that.
attacks.
Cyber attacks.
Cyber attacks,
And it's
everything
really easy for a team of like 4 guys to stage across most of the United States and major cities and take out the big transformers
easily.
without. It's
You
not
can
like they're
you can
guarded
get
with
guns.
security.
Take
Yeah.
it out with guns.
Yep.
Doesn't take much to take them out.
They're really easy to take out. They're not hardened. They're not.
Nope.
Yep.
No,
So,
it'd be real easy. So we're going to get started because we got James here. He's a good friend, and he is a genius when it comes to preparedness. So just to let you guys know, online, we launched our 5-day preparedness challenge about 2 to 3 weeks ago. We have had so many people coming into it, and we haven't even turned up the engines yet. So we're still working out all these bugs online to make sure that we can handle the traffic, and it's been a lot. It's been growing a lot faster than I expected. So I believe wholeheartedly we have a goal to help 10,000 families get prepared within 12 months. I think we're going to outpass that 10,000 families. And what the way we're doing it is a $17 challenge that turns into a VIP challenge along with that turns into a $997 course that if people finish that course within within 90 days, we send them a $1,000 package in the mail. So they get their money right back. And the reason why we did $997 is because if we did $20, people would pay for it and never value it. They would never do it. If we charged $1 million, they would definitely do it. 1,000 is that point where it hurts, where people say, I just forked out $997. I got to get that back. And then they work really hard to get that 90 days back. When we send out when we get to 9,999 and send out our next package and get to 10,000, that's when we know we helped 10,000 families because we gave back a $1,000 package. Does that make sense? So that's what we're working on right now, and it's growing real quick. The reason I'm bringing that up is because right now we're allowing people to come into these meetings. We've been letting everybody come into the meetings. Eventually, while it grows, we're going to have to limit it to the people who are Thriveless members because we just don't have enough room for everyone. And while we're doing that, we'll probably let you bring a family member or a friend with you if you're the Thriveless member. If you're not a Thriveless member, after this meeting, talk to them about the offer we're giving you right now. So that's what I wanted to bring up. So without any further delay, since we finally have the power back on, I'd like to bring my friend James up here and have you stand right here with me. We're going to get started. He can talk on probably 100 different topics, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. He and I have known each other probably close to 20 years or so, about 20 years, and he is one of the top experts that I love to kick around ideas with. So we'll just say, what about this? What about that? And it's super fun. So you guys are in for an amazing treat tonight. And without any further ado, go ahead and take over and I'll run the camera.
okay. Well, it'll be interesting because we got to pivot some of the information and stuff tonight. We're gonna have to condense some pieces, but so normally we open up and first of all, how much information is online right now? A ton, right? Like, if we raise the hands, whose BS meter is like kind of pegged out, right? And it's hard to find stuff because there's so much out there that especially if you don't have any experience within a certain niche within, emergency preparedness or anything related, sometimes it can be hard to like sort out the fluff and figure out like, well, what is that really legit or is it not? Like a lot of misinformation, a lot of just stuff is just regurgitated information that, might not be applicable anymore. So I think it's always important to know who you're listening to and kind of validate them. Normally, I would go through, information and tell you what my background is, but kind of in summary, like Marcelo said, I've been in the emergency preparedness industry and cross industries for a long time, for over 20 something years. And it's been a good ride. Like, I'm just a naturally curious person, and I'm also was raised as a Boy Scout from when I was, in diapers from, my upbringing and stuff. So that's where a lot of this comes from. I've got backgrounds in everything from wilderness survival to advanced medical to, just all of the main pillars that make up, what it takes to be kind of just, I don't like to call it emergency preparedness. I just like to call it life preparedness. Just prepared for next Tuesday. Sometimes we get focused on the apocalypse coming down the road, and it's like, well, what about next Tuesday? So with that in mind, let's talk about home security. We saw, how easy it was for infrastructure to go down, and there's a big security gap there, so to speak. And so when we think about our own lives, where do you spend most of your time aside from at work? Because really, it's either work or home are the two places, and most of the time you spend at home, sadly, our age is sleeping, right? That's where we spend most of the time at our house. But aside from at our workplace or transitioning from one place to another, the home security is kind of the key focus of one of our biggest gaps that we need to think about closing. So the topics we'll address tonight: understanding home security fundamentals, identifying common threats and vulnerabilities, potentially, if we can get to it, to conduct a risk assessment. I don't know if we'll be able to get that far tonight just because of time frame with the events that we just experienced. But I really want to get to that last point, which is physical security measures, like some things that you can do tomorrow, since tonight you probably won't be taking much action. But tomorrow, what could you start doing to harden your house against both, everything from thieves to societal disruptions? So with that being said, real quick, I just want to find out, just ask an open question really quick. What are some of your guys' key questions, or what are some of the key things on your mind that you're hoping we'll cover tonight? That'll help me kind of sift out all the information, because in all honesty, when we do like our master class on security, home security, it's a 2-day course. It's a 2-day course with a lot of hands-on application and stuff. So to cover all this in, well, now less than an hour for tonight is going to be a tall challenge. So just by raising quick hands, just maybe 3 or 4 of the top questions. Anybody? Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
So, as we kind of spread ourselves out in preparedness as far as power and backup in these kind of things, how do we not be so out there for people to see? How can we be more conspicuous of what that is?
Okay, so maybe
Test.
maybe to reframe that, maybe he's asking how can we be less conspicuous about some of the preparations that we're doing. So maybe some overt and some covert methods, stuff that you can see and are helpful to be visual, and other stuff that you can't see. Okay, all right. What else?
Or here, let me get this back there. Can you pass this around for the people?
How's the best way to fortify your house against break-ins?
Okay, so physical fortifications. Okay, we're going to be talking about two key points. I am going to be my goal here tonight is to teach you guys how to think like a criminal. Okay, that if you walk away with almost nothing else, I want to have a framework for you guys to be changing your mindset of how you view everything, day-to-day life, but specifically for your house, on how to think like a criminal. Because we're going to talk about psychological fortifications for your home and physical fortifications for your home. Psychological mainly deals with this first part, just day-to-day hardening your house against thieves. And physical fortifications does this as well, but for societal disruptions, if there's ever a full breakdown, these things pull right over. Okay, great. Okay, what else? Maybe 2 more?
Harden even greater. A thief,
Go ahead, Mike.
a thief would be deterred by it being hardened and go to an easier target. But in societal breakdown where people are hungry and desperate, if they can't get in, they're going to come back more prepared and then get in.
Yep. Yeah, so maybe how do you make sure that your home's hardened, not just for an initial...
They'll keep trying. till
Okay,
it's done.
so for repeat access or repeat attempts, okay. Anyone else? Okay, all right. Okay, so teaching you how to think like a criminal. I'm going to run off of this little outline since my my main tablet is did not reconnect to the internet, guys. So, all right. Okay, so let's first identify what are, in order to get prepared for, prepare our house, we kind of have to know what the most potential threats are, right? And usually when we open that up for questions, most people are like, what should I be worried about? That's one of the biggest questions, and that's one of the best questions, is what type of security do you need to be thinking about and worrying about? Well, what are the most likely threats against your house? Okay, most. And it's not going to be what you think it is. Because when we talk about home security, we're just thinking about physical altercation, break-ins, things like that, right? Thievery, burglary, invasion of mayhem, things like that. Most likely, any guesses? Okay, so other people, access points. I heard somebody say garage door, things like this. Okay, this is still physical security. Fire. Flooding. Why am I listing earthquake? Why am I listing the 3 biggest natural disasters, especially in Utah, that we are likely to experience? Well, first of all, what's most likely to happen is one of these 3, right? Secondly, any of these 3, now house fire obviously is not going to cause a societal disruption, but large-scale flooding and earthquake, could that lead to people becoming desperate, people that are ill-prepared, now maybe criminals that want to take massive advantage? Most of your criminals, your thieves and things like this, when we talked about overt versus covert, right? We talked about what type of preparations, overt versus covert. What does overt mean? Yeah, blatant, visible, okay. What about covert? Yeah, you don't notice it. If I'm a criminal, here, let's start getting into some psychology. If I'm a criminal and I'm going through society, I'm looking to take advantage of opportunities. Okay, think of criminals like really creative entrepreneur business people, but with no ethics. Okay, so if they can lie, cheat, or steal to acquire what they want or desire, they will. Sometimes it's to fund habits that they have. Sometimes it's just, just the nature of how that person might be. So as criminals go through society and they operate in public and privately, most of the time they are just looking for soft targets. Okay, they're looking for areas where it's easy. People say criminals are lazy. Do you guys agree with that?
Yes,
Why?
because they don't get a job and study and work hard to earn a living.
And that's the most common thing. He said they don't get a job, they don't want to work hard, they don't want to put any effort into. But here's the thing, criminals simply have a different paradigm of what that's about. A lot of the criminals that I've interviewed and been familiar with, they are actually really hard workers. They're super creative. They're super hard workers. They're resourceful. But the problem is they just have a different scope. They have a different paradigm of what they think is how they want to acquire stuff. So they don't want to go out and start their own business because that might be boring, or they might perceive that as too much information. But what they will do is go to a lot of lengths to case your house, to find targets of opportunity, okay?
Really good one.
So,
Me.
hold on just a second. All right, so these are the most likely things that we need to protect against. This is why we're at home, and this is our home. The other point that we want to bring up here to give some context is public spaces, okay? And normally we would get into this a little bit more because this is where we really start to understand. This is where we really start to understand how criminals think. What's the psychology? What's the mindset? What are they looking for? Okay, anytime that they could find something that is what we'd call an easy mark, what we'd call something easy to take advantage of. Like when you're on your phone and you're, coming home from work and all of a sudden did you have plans to go to McDonald's to buy a French fry? Probably not, right? You got other things on your mind. But all of a sudden, bing, that little alert comes off from your McDonald's app and it says, free fries Friday, just show the coupon and you get free fries. How many of us would, oh, there's a McDonald's right on the way home. We're going to probably divert over and get that free French fry, right? It's the same type of thing. When criminals are going through an area and they're like, dude, I drive from here to my apartment down there 3 times a week, and this guy always has his garage door open. And he's got some nice tools in there and this and that and the other. And I also noticed that he doesn't even shut his garage door. I have a neighbor that, or had a neighbor that never shut his garage door at night or anything. And I'm like, dude, you're gonna get your stuff stolen. You got to start shutting that door. Sure enough, he had a nice Husqvarna 0-turn lawnmower. It was like $4,000. One night they hauled it off, and he's like, hey, do you have footage from your Ring doorbell? That you might be able to find this. I did a police report. I'm like, I'll look, but. So public spaces, criminals are always on the lookout. Now, when we talk about home security, it really doesn't start in your house. It actually starts with each of us individually and your mindset. So when we're operating in public, we want to start thinking like, not thinking like a criminal to take action like a criminal, but to think and identify soft targets and stuff on how a criminal would think. For example, as you're going through public spaces, normally at this point in the presentation, we would talk about some of the key areas where people generally get taken advantage of, get attacked, get mugged, robbed, these type of things. And they're always in these really interesting places that you would never consider. Once you hear them, you're like, oh yeah. So parking lots, that's a huge one. And why is that? And it all comes down to the same thing, whether it's a parking lot. Yeah, somebody's over here is doing this. Yeah, we got our blinders up, right? Like when we talk about, Cooper's, we normally go into this too. There's a Jeff Cooper. If you look up Cooper's Color Code of Awareness, that'd be really good homework to look up and just read about. These devices, right? These are one of the biggest culprits that criminals love when people are on their cell phones, because you kind of tunnel vision in. You're doing something, you're responding to your spouse after work. You just went in and got groceries, right? You got all your groceries, you're pushing them out to your car. Bing, the phone goes off, right? You're like, oh, is that my kids staying late from practice or what? Like you're always on your phone. And then what do you do after that? You get to your car and you start phone in one hand, start to load groceries into your car with another. Now you're split focused, right? Your mind is trying to put groceries in the car while you're trying to respond or check something on your phone. So we call these areas of transitional areas. And they're one of criminals' biggest things that they take advantage of. And they're not just in public spaces. There's areas of transition at our house, okay? So let's flip this around here. So if we start thinking like a criminal, and let's do this, just because for sake of time. Let's say that this is your property. Now these principles are all going to be the same, but how you apply them is going to be vastly different, because you might live in a house, you might live in a rural environment with a property, fences, pastures, things like that, or you might live stuck in the middle of like New York City in a tiny little apartment flat. But the principle is the same. We're going to work out and in, just like if I'm a criminal and I've identified a house or a person's residence as somewhere where there's some opportunity there for me to get some free French fries, the McDonald's app Bing is going off. I'm going to always be working from out from in. The first thing first is your neighborhood. So this whiteboard, let's consider that your neighborhood. We talk a lot about understanding baseline. So the first thing when it comes to home security, the very first thing that you've got to really start to make a big mental shift is in mindset and awareness. Starting to become really aware of surroundings and what's going on. And that's what we were talking about, with the transitional spaces. So as I'm working as a criminal, come out from in, I might be looking at a home, and most they've done studies, and a lot of home break-ins, invasions, and robberies happen. It wasn't just, oh, there's a house, I'm just going to hit it right now. No, they were going to wait for the opportune time. Nighttime is really good because a lot of people, don't really have the proper lighting on their house and things like this. So the soft targets that are present in a home during the daylight are magnified and get bigger at night. Okay, it's easier to operate under the cover of darkness, but that doesn't stop that. I think the stat was that daytime home invasions with physical harm are up like 68% or something over just the last 5 years. So we're getting to be and it just depends on the area, but it's beginning to be kind of epidemical. So let's say you've got your house here, okay? Maybe let's say there's a garage here or whatever. So as we start to talk about how to start hardening our houses, I'd really like to talk more about the psychology and stuff, because it'll really start helping formulate and kind of format your mind and your thinking. But let's start. Well, we don't have enough time. I would love to get into that, but we've got a short time period here. So We're talking about, so perimeter first, okay? So when you start thinking about your house, I want to start giving you some frameworks, and then we can do a follow-up class and really get into some of the nuts and bolts of this. But I want to at least get to the point where we can teach you about some of the physical and the psychological components that you can do to harden your house. So when we talk about perimeter, whatever that shape is for your property, we've got this blue line here, right? Now, what you wanted to start doing is start approaching the house from or property from the outside in and start thinking about access points. That's what I'm looking for. As I'm a criminal, I'm looking for access points. So we want to put up some deterrents first if we can. So that might look like an exterior fence. Now, fences can work two ways. All right. So fences, short fences can, tall fences can work two ways. They can shield from criminals being able to see in. But if a criminal, like say you have a side gate over here and you haven't secured that, and a criminal can, maybe there's a running path here behind your house, and that criminal starts to know your property pretty well, and he knows at night he can slip back here and get into your perimeter. Well, if you have a 6-foot high fence around your entire property, that's a pretty good thing for a criminal, right? Because now people can't see in. The other neighbors, the neighborhood, they can't see in, they can't see access. So sometimes, tall fences, physical deterrents, they can work pretty well, but they also can block out visually. So you have to keep that in mind. It's a two-edged sword. Short fences can provide, especially when we talk about societal disruptions, a short fence isn't really going to stop a criminal, right? It just tops over it or whatever, but it does slow people down, and it can provide what we call tripwires. You want to have multiple layers of tripwires of things that are either alerts or slowing the criminal down or just straight up deterrents. So as they come onto your property, there's some things that you can do. Let's talk about some psychological stuff. So, and I'll just start throwing out some tips and tricks here. When we go to does anybody know what red pen testing is? So red pen testing is like when you get hired out by a company or a person to come in and be a criminal. Your job is to probe their security, find out where their holes are, their weaknesses, and then, hopefully not get detected in the process. If that's your job. And then you're able to come back and give them a report and say, here's how I got in, here's what we did, here's how you can close that gap. Okay, a lot of times it's businesses and corporations employ that, but government agencies do as well. So if we're going to red pen test this home, we're going to come into the house, or come into the property and start, doing an assessment. And first thing as a criminal I'm looking for are indicators, lifestyle indicators. What am I up against here? So one of the funniest tricks that I learned from a really educated dude in this arena is he would go to a thrift store. Anytime he moved into a new house, he would go into the thrift store and look for the biggest dog bowl that he could find, preferably one that was chewed up, right? So, and he would put one of those on the front porch, and we put one anywhere where there's a big access point. He'd put one at front porch, back porch. And then occasionally he would even fill them with water. And what does that say? If I'm coming up on that and I see a dog bowl, there may or may not be a dog there, but that's an important indicator, because dogs are a bad thing for criminals. They have a really good sixth sense. Another thing he does when he's at the thrift store is he picks up a pair of the biggest size 12, 13 boots that he can find. Now, when you come to a house and you see the porch and there's footwear on the porch, what do I know about who lives there? Are they kids' shoes? Are they loafers? Is it a retired couple? Are they gardening shoes? This type of thing. But if I see a big pair of pretty beat up work boots, I wouldn't want to go to Walmart and buy a brand new pair of big work boots, right? It's like, oh, I want something that's worn, looks mangled and dirty, and they look well used. That tells me that, and especially if they're work boots, that might tell me something about the lifestyle of the person, things like that, right? Security signs. Are there any security signs? Now, all that tells me is that there's a security sign there. So as a criminal, that could be an active security system in place. That could not. As I'm looking through windows, I'm looking for little contact sensors for when windows are broken or opened. But even then, most of those are almost always out of batteries. If I have to break into a house and I see contact sensors there, I'm checking a lot of other things first, but that's not going to be necessarily the biggest deterrent. But you start adding all of these different layers of protection up, and now we're starting to have some psychological. If I come into a house and I see, okay, there's an access gate here, and it's got a padlock on it. There's an access gate here, and it's got a padlock, and they're good padlocks. Criminals know the difference. They know brands. They know how fast I can pop into a pit with very simple tools, how fast you can pop a padlock open and things like that. Are there sheds? A lot of times people will have sheds. This is really interesting. A lot of times people have sheds that, especially if they're rural or near rural, where it bisects the property perimeter. So, and almost, who locks their shed? Four people out of the whole, four or five people out of, and then if we were to go online, it's a very small percentage, right? And most of the time, the locks that are used on these sheds are very easy to penetrate. In fact, one of the big things I want to get to tonight to show you what you can do tomorrow is, here's an example of the framework of a door jamb, okay, for your exterior doors on your house, especially newer construction, right? Like anything pretty much nowadays. How big do you think the screws are that put those sheds together? They're not very big, right? So on the sheds, you might invest in like, you know, an Albus really nice disc lock or something. Maybe that's a little disproportional for the shed, but all I have to do is come up. There's a few different techniques of being able to come up and body lean that shed, pop the hasp right off the shed or the house. So these are just different points to be thinking about. Okay. The other thing that is really important to think about is when we talk about access is perimeter door. So anytime we move into a new house, the first thing I do is I go out and get some type of smart lock that has some type of like connectivity that I can be alerted. So it's just, again, am I fully reliant on that? No, if the power's cut and I don't have network capability, right? Like that door could be open and access and I might not know about it. So if they try to cut the power to my house, that's another area that I need to harden. But the point is anywhere there's an external access. So we got a full garage door here, garage door in the back, door that leads into the house. These are all perimeter, external perimeter ingress points or entry points. And I also consider anything from the garage into the house is also an external. So anywhere where I have an external door, I try to, now brands are all equal, and even models within brands are not equal. That's a whole nother discussion that we can have offline. But the point is I like to have some type of lock, and it's not just electronic. I want to make sure it has a key as well. Because if the batteries go dead on that for some reason, and I can't punch in the code to get into that portion of the house, that becomes a problem. Did you have a question over here?
Oh, would you like questions at the end?
Yeah. Just because of the sake of time, I would normally like to kind of flow through questions and have it guide the present, but I think we'll probably get down too many rabbit holes, especially the way that my brain works. We could literally talk for an hour at least on any of these single points that we've brought up. So I just want to start getting you to think about perimeter access to the property and perimeter access to the house. Now, one of the biggest deterrents is lighting. And lighting these days is so stinking cheap. LEDs are crazy bright. You can even go to Harbor Freight and get, you know, some solar panel, LED spotlights and things like that, and start putting them at different areas. Now, let's say you have let's say here's the garage, and you've got, you know, your trash cans sitting out here. Any place where you have like, landscaping is really pretty, it's nice, but we do what's called defensive landscaping. So it's not so tall, like a bush is not so tall that somebody could hide behind that or create different entry points, you know, to hide behind garbage cans and things like that. So my goal is to flood around the house, motion sensing lights. Also, you know, our front porch lights and our side extension lights, they're on a timer as well that I can control with my phone. And especially outside of, you know, like wherever our bedroom is, if we have a window there, I also want to put some type of motion sensing light in the backyard such that if that thing goes off, then, you know, I'm aware of it at least. It becomes a little bit different considerations when you have dogs and stuff too, because then your dogs might be setting those off. But criminals don't like that, don't like lights. Here's another one that I learned from somebody, and I thought it was freaking genius, and I've never heard anybody else say it. Motion sensing sprinkler. So you can take a hose, feed it out to a sprinkler that you just stick in the grass. That's one of the you know, type of things. And you hook, it's got a motion sensor that hooks up to it. And if anybody crosses that area, it turns on the sprinkler. And you wouldn't believe how big of a deterrent that is. Criminals don't like to get wet apparently, but it also is so weird and out of the norm that it really it kind of messes them up. It messes with their psyche. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to mess with anything we can to mess with their psyche. Now, windows are another ingress point, so entry point, as well as, okay, we talked about power. Let's say my power box is over here, right? Well, for that, to start making that kind of a deterrent to get in there, I might want to plant some really thorny bushes right there at the power. Do I care about the utility company? Oh, they can deal with it, right? Exactly. They have the time. They can get some thick leather gloves and move stuff aside. They're not allowed to damage your property and stuff. So around the points where I have my power access, I want to have those hardened psychologically as well as physically. You know, I even might go to the effort to actually install shrouds and stuff around the line so that they can't be cut and things like this. Okay. Did you have something? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Under windows. Great place to put, you know, thorny decorative bushes, especially, you know, maybe of the blackberry kind and stuff. So they're also producing some fruit for you throughout the year. So just start to, you know, get your head around decorative landscaping. When we talk about societal disruptions and things like that, you know, a lot of times we talk about organizational hardening too, like cement planters can be a really good idea for out in the front to stop vehicular entry into the property and things like that. Anyway, like I said, we can get into, man, there's so many rabbit holes. But let's talk about, who wants to talk about the door thing real quick? Because I want everybody to understand this with the doors. And this is one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't realize. And I can almost guarantee you that almost all your doors are going to be like this. So when you have your door, this is the construction of a door. So the house gets framed and it has these big studs, right? But then when they come to hang the door, it's not on big 2x4s. Have you noticed that? Have you seen that the frame is this size? This is a piece of door frame. This is how thick a door frame is. So it comes in here and then they fit the door frame in, and then usually with an air gun, pop, 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 put in some brad nails that they just barely go into the wood. They set it, right? And then if you're lucky, they might drive a couple thicker nails in. But then when you go to install the door hardware, so the strike plate, you know, and then the deadbolt plate, same thing. So on the door itself, most doors are what's called hollow core. So they're not even solid doors, first of all. And then secondly, here's where this becomes important. And usually when we teach this, I like having the full-size door frame up so we can actually set it up and you guys can take turns. Well, the first person can take a turn kicking the door, because usually what will happen is, see the strike plate here, that's where the tongue of the door lock goes into, right? So the tongue of the door lock goes in here, and then if you have a deadbolt, there's another strike plate up here for the deadbolt, and the deadbolt tongue goes into the frame as well, into the door jamb, I should say. Now those aren't in there very far, and these screws that they mount this hardware in, they're not very big. Generally, that's what you see. What is that? An inch? If that, right? An inch. So when we drive that in, you can see this one's long. That's if you're lucky. This one, see how far that goes in there? Maybe a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch. But most of the time, they're more like this. So they don't even go in all the way. They simply, so it doesn't even poke into the wood. So all that is centered in this door jamb. And when you kick it, especially there's a technique that, you know, Ellie and us military type people use called donkey kick. You just come up against the door, just kind of nonchalantly, raise your knee up like you're stretching and just kick straight back in. And usually 2 kicks is all it takes to blow this whole piece in. And it's not very loud, and it takes a fraction of a second, and now they've got entry into your home. But I had my deadbolt locked, right? Well, if it doesn't go into anything, what good is it really doing, right? So the first thing you can do tomorrow is just go to Home Depot and buy some long screws. He had one in his pocket. Just some long 3 inches. So 3 inches long. And you'll notice when I drive this in, how deep is that going into that 2x4? All the way through. And a lot of times when they frame up doors, you'll have 2 of these because the frame up 16 inches apart on the studs, blah, blah, blah. And when it gets to the door frame, they put a second one in here, which is kind of silly because it's more structural than it is structural this way. So now this just drove through 1 2x4 and into a second. Now screws by nature are not as high of strength shear shear strength, side to side. They're really good to grab and pull in. Nails are really good shear strength, but you're not going to want to necessarily drive a nail into here, and then how do you get that nail out if you need to change hardware out? So 3-inch screws usually do the trick. And what you're going to do is you're going to replace the strike plate screws, and it literally takes 2 seconds because you're going to zip one out. If you have a drill, I don't know how you do this with a hand screwdriver, it'd take you a while, but it literally take you less than 5 minutes. You're going to replace those 2 screws on the strike plate of the door key and the deadbolt. And then you're going to, on the door itself too, a lot of times they're just thin metal and stuff. I like to replace it with at least a 2-incher on the door itself. But then the other place you're going to replace them is on the hinges. And to make this easier, wish I had a better demo of this. When you open the door up, don't unzip all of the screws and then have to grab that door and then zip them back up. Take one at a time, unzip one little one, grab a big one, zip a big one in. Unscrew a little one and just work top from bottom. Replace all the screws on both sides of that hinge. If you do that, we've then done penetration tests and tested it, and you cannot believe the strength that comes from that. Now, if you have a really old door jamb or a really crappy one, they also sell these long, like a metal strike plate that goes the whole length of it, and they're not necessarily super cheap, but they're not crazy expensive either. So that's another thing you can do to boost the strength of that. When we lived in Salt Lake, to my chagrin, because man, Salt Lake has gotten so full of crime, it's crazy. We would always put one of these at the door at night. So this is it's a vertical Katie bar. Does anybody know what a Katie bar is? It's kind of an interesting story. It goes back to the Middle Ages. Anyway, it's like in movies where you see them drop a bar sideways across the door. They make them really decorative now and nice, but they're awesome because you bolt on these decorative brackets, L brackets, onto the wall into studs, and then you have just a Katie bar that just swings up and clips here, and it just looks nice. It just looks all nice, and then you could swing it, kunk, and lock it into those 2 brackets, and that will really prevent. Because if you're talking about societal disruptions, your front door and your back door are 2 of your weakest points on your house. Not to mention glass. We'll get into that in just a second. So something that you don't have to modify too much. These are kind of cool because it has all these different holes that you can slide up and down. You can get these on Amazon. Maybe Marcelo can get these in the store or something. But this just goes up underneath the door handle and then just kick that onto the door. And they work really good. If you have a really slick floor, you can also take and just screw a piece of like laminate or something, or just some couple screws that still looks, decent. Screw that onto the ground, and then it has like a kickstand to go up against. But this is super cheap, and this can really, so that we had one of these on our doors in Salt Lake. Any questions with the doors so far? Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the kind of the attach points.
Yeah, so imagine this is the door handle. You just stick it up under the door handle and then kick the bottom in. And then if that door was to try to pull open, and if you've reinforced those hinges, then this door ain't going anywhere. The door would cave in itself before, and most of them are made out of aluminum with a foam core in the middle, so usually they just kind of bend. This one's actually made by Master Lock. All these resources and things, I have for you guys, and I have a home security checklist and assessment for you guys to download. Unfortunately, just like the tech we experienced tonight, we're doing a full site migration right now to a new website. And so the download page that I have up for you guys to go to download it, in fact, I'll just give you the link right now if you want to write it down. I'm also going to give all this to Marcel, and he'll be able to send it out to you. But once we start putting the articles back in the site, one of the first articles I'll put back over to the new site is, let me tell you what it's called. Okay, so it's going to, the link is going to be adaptiveresponsetraining.com. That's our website, adaptiveresponsetraining.com/home security download. Okay, and then we have a, then I'll put over the security article too. I think it's called Home Security, Securing Your Home and Your Family, something to that effect. But in that article, I have outlined some exceptional videos on YouTube that you can go start watching through his playlists. Some really, really good stuff on YouTube, so you don't have to go sift through a bunch of fluff. And a lot of those videos it'll go into more depth of the stuff that we were going to talk about tonight. And yeah, go ahead.
What's after the / again?
Oh, on the download? Sorry, I'm doing the trombone thing. I don't have my glasses on. AdaptiveResponseTraining.com / home security download. Home security download. And it's basically, it's a worksheet that I prepared for y'all. We usually give it out at our home security workshops. It basically just takes you through a physical assessment to go through your own property and what to think about, what to look for, and then go and rank yourself on where you're at with your lighting, where you're at with your penetration testing on your outside of your house, some of these psychological deterrents. It takes you through a checklist of all that, so you can walk through and start closing your gaps. And then it has links to some resources and stuff as well. But we will get that up, and I will get all that over to Marcelo, and then he can send it out to everybody, either on the list or whoever came to the class, both online and offline. Okay, windows. Okay, any more questions about doors? Oh, so we talked about barring your door, hardening your hinges, hardening your strike plates. Okay, so who has a door that looks like, yeah, we'll just keep doing this here. Who has a door that looks like this? Nice, solid, secure door. Let's say it's wood. Maybe it has some decorative glass, but it's high enough up that it's not as big of a concern to break in to get access to the handle, right? But then what's usually off to the side? We love our decorative glass. Now this can work two ways, because you can see, if it's not frosted, you could see who's coming to the door, this and that and the other. But criminals love this because there's some different methods of breaking glass that's almost undetectable. When's the last time that you heard a car alarm go off and you actually looked out the window? Never, right? Like, we've got a neighbor that I think their kid is playing with their freaking fob because it's going off like 7 times even just before dinner. And then at 2 in the morning. Normally I try to make it a point to be like, okay, I need to just at least take a peek to make sure no one's breaking into somebody's car. But it's to the point now, if I come up to your house and I've got a nice little brown hat and a brown jacket on, and I'm carrying a package coming up to your front door, because I've already seen and know that you guys leave at 8:30 in the morning and nobody is there all day long, and I've watched your house for 4 days while I'm walking my dog, right? Or whatever. So I know when the house is generally empty. So if I come up to this house, and there's so many different techniques. Carry a dish rag, hanging out of the back of my pocket. Duct tape on the edge of that thing. Come up, stick the duct tape right here. Dish rag's here. Right in the corner, pop it. I'm a first responder, and my pen that I carry has a little carbide glass breaker on the corner. That's for getting into vehicles. Vehicle glass is really hard, but if you take vehicle glass and you hit it on this corner where it's supported, I hit that right there on the corner, pop, I can pop that whole car window right out. So same thing here, dish rag, punk, that quiets it. If I really want to be quiet, I just have to roll a duct tape with me. I just take the duct tape off and I just tape up. In fact, if I go to the DI or the thrift store, I'm used to living in Utah, so I always say DI, but Goodwill or whatever, and I find myself a nice, Orkin shirt or something that looks like either pest control or utilities maintenance or whatever. I've got a pair of dress slacks on, and I walk up and I'm taping this window up. Is anybody going to think twice? They're probably going to think I'm there to repair a broken window, right? I'm taping the window up with tape, so when I smack it, it breaks, doesn't make any noise at all. And all I have to do is just push in, unlock the door, and then if I'm looking in and out of the house, I just look like I'm there working on the house. Your neighbors are not gonna, unless you have some really alert neighbors. But this is just to give you kind of an idea of how criminals think. It is so easy to gain access. So what do I recommend for the front doors then? A good solid door, replace the hinges like we talked, or the hinge screws like we talked about, harden the frame. And while you're home, obviously, is to prevent straight up on right breakdowns coming in your house. Protecting let's talk about the glass in just a second. But on the door, the other thing I want to do is install a metal storm door. and they're fantastic. Not one of these like cheap, storm doors that's like mostly glass and stuff, but like an actual metal type frame store. You can see through them, but they're just called a storm door. They were designed initially in areas of like high winds, high hurricanes, tornadoes, and stuff like that, so people don't get their regular door broken in. So you can install one of those that locks from the inside. That's a really good deterrent for the outside and the inside. And then for these windows, as well as like plate glass windows that might be to the sides and things like that, this is really familiar in businesses in high metro areas, but this is just a film you can buy. And this is what it looks like. It's nothing, it doesn't look like anything special. See how thin it is? This film gets installed. It's a wet install, and it has an adhesive on it that activates when it's wet. And when you put it on your windows, I kid you not, if we had one in here, it's kind of fun to demonstrate it, because you come up to it with a baseball bat, a crowbar, and smack it. The window will break, the glass will break, and just spider. But that film is so tenacious that you can't really get through it. It's designed to prevent vandalism and stuff in cities. So, retail storefronts, especially areas that it got developed in areas where they didn't really have the infrastructure and stuff to set up, like they couldn't do like the rollers, like the rolling shutters, because they're in these nice, retail locations in the middle of the city, and it's against like the business HOA type of thing. And so they use this security film.
Regularly?
No, it doesn't. It's Oh yeah, she asked if it has to be replaced
Does it
regularly.
have to be replaced
Like if we put this
regularly?
on like Marcelo's doors, how often we would have to replace it? It's specifically designed for this use, so it's designed to resist UV. So it's designed to not yellow over time and everything. And it's just, once you put it up, it's just clear. You can't really tell it's on there. And it's not something you can peel off. Like when you go to peel it off, it's a chore to peel it off. So most of the time, the only time it gets replaced is if the window gets broken, and then they replace the whole window and then have to refilm it after that. She wants to know if you could use it on sliding doors. Yep, any glass, any glass. In fact, that was our concern in Salt Lake, is we had a big, nice fence. We lived in an apartment in Salt Lake, and we had a big, nice fence around the back, but we had 2 big sliding glass doors. And I was like, man, this is like one of our biggest vulnerabilities, because if they hop the fence, nobody else can see them, And so the other thing too is I had a little girl, and I teach medical, and my big concern is a lot of kids every year, especially if you're really good cleaning your windows and stuff, and they're very crystal clear. Little kids run through plate glass windows all the time, so getting major lacerated up is a big scare for me. Like if I'm not home and my girl goes through a glass window or a glass screen or a sliding door, so putting this security film on also prevents that, so that glass can break, but she can't like fall through it and cut herself. Amazon. Yeah, just look up Windows security film.
Okay.
And then read the reviews and stuff, so you're buying a decent brand.
That's very good to know in our case, because we have 4 huge, tall windows,
Okay.
about that wide. And how many feet, Ron? Must be about 12, 14 feet.
Okay. Yeah, because normally what we recommend, like for the whole like societal disruption thing, like how do you prevent people from coming into your house when you have those big glass windows and stuff? Normally what we talk about is on really high access areas, there's decorative bars that you can put and bolt into the cement or whatever type of house you have. But the problem with that is you got bars on your window now. And so now what happens if you have like a fire, right? So that also is a concern too, because if we have security film on our glass, I'm not going to be able to just throw a chair through that glass, right? And so, you have to start thinking about like, okay, do we need to have some type of access tool that's nearby and stuff that we have to get out of a glass window? We can. And so these are all considerations that you have to kind of weigh out and consider. And I can tell you kind of how we've solved that as well at our house, but for sake of time. So you can also do, like I said, thorny bushes and stuff underneath the windows to prevent them trying to get access, especially secluded windows like in the backyard and stuff. Those first 4-story windows, and basement windows too, if you have a basement. That's another big. Now the basement windows are not as big a deal with the window wells, because you can get those decorative security covers for the window wells, and then underneath it, it has a security latch from the inside. So if you need to escape the basement from a fire, it has a latch that you could unlatch, and then the whole security grate lifts up and you can get out of the window well. But from the outside, it's inaccessible. In fact, they're designed so that they're crowbar resistant and things like that. Is that cool? You like the security film? It's pretty sweet, huh? And it's not too expensive. I mean, that's a big roll. This is a big roll. And so this would do, pretty much an entire, well, it depends on the size of your house. But, and it's not super difficult to install. You just, watch a couple YouTube videos. They show you how to do it. And it's, you just install it with water and then squeegee it to make it no bubbles and stuff like that. And it's also semi-gas permeable, the good brands are. So any bubbles that might still be remaining, as it dries, it goes crystal. Okay, let's see, what else? Who's gotten value so far out of just the security measures? What's everybody gonna do, like tomorrow? What's the first thing you're all gonna do? Screws?
Go on Amazon and buy some of that film.
Okay, so security film. Yeah, tonight, order it tonight so it gets here before the next couple days. Yeah. This is the security window film, I think, is one of the biggest things because, like you said, you can't really control the window. What are you going to do? You're going to board your windows, right? Like now, during a full-on societal disruption, that brings up another point. So for me at my house, if we knew we had pre-warning that stuff was about ready to go down, and we could potentially see some crazy stuff in our areas or in our neighborhoods, right? Is that the time to be trying to figure out how to navigate traffic and everything with everybody else out, to go down to Home Depot and, they're sold out because we don't have, like when we lived in the old days when we had like, they're out of stock. Hey, could you go check the back room? Oh yeah, we have 3 in the back room. Where they get back inventory. We have JIT now, just-in-time servicing, groceries, hardware's the same way. They don't reorder until inventory in their system gets so low, and then the trucks come and deliver. So you think during, like, say we don't live in a hurricane area, but say that they had advance notice and they said, hey, we're expecting a hurricane on Thursday. What's today? Tuesday. Do you think Home Depot is going to have any wood left over by the end of business tomorrow? It's going to be gone. So if you have the space for it in your garage and you have some, the funds, because now plywood and stuff has finally come back down in price. It's like $90 a sheet at one point during COVID. So what we've done is, as we could afford to, we've gone to the Home Depot, picked up some, quarter to half inch ply, and stored that in the garage, for projects. But if shiz was going down and I hear that, and I've got my indicators on my phone and my different networks that I'm, anyway, we don't get into that, and I know that things might go down, maybe at that point I might be starting to pull out some hardwood and stuff and putting up some hard barriers, things like that. There's all sorts of crazy tricks you can do too if stuff's already started to come through, how you can get people to leave your house, potentially leave your house alone. You read in different books and stuff. I mean, this is getting really down a rabbit hole. Let's say we've already talked for 4 hours on this and you're still looking for more like tips and tricks. It's like you can take some black Krylon spray paint that comes off your house pretty easily, and anywhere where there's a gable vent around your house, you kind of spray that and it actually looks like the house has been burned and smokes out on the house. And then you take a bunch of just your random stuff that you would have taken to DI and you just throw it out on the front lawn, books and stuff, just shred them and toss them everywhere, and then board up the front of the house and then spray paint, some type of government looking symbol on the whole thing. So it looks like that house had been raided already. These are some weird, just different ideas that have been known to work in the past in some really bad areas of the world. Speaking of books, because somebody's going to ask me this, like, what are 2 of my best books that you can start looking at to kind of start wrapping your head around some, like, way more than we can talk about here. Joel Skousen has a few different books that are fantastic. This one called The Secure Home. You can still get this usually on like thriftbooks.com or abebooks.com used for not very much money, but this is a fantastic book. The only downside is it's big, and so you have to really be committed to like wanting to learn how to implement some of this stuff, but it's all really, really good stuff. And then the other one that is actually out of print, I have not been able to find this. I got this from Kevin Reeve, who I just found out has passed, who owned On Point Tactical, and he was one of the best preparedness experts in the world. This is called A Failure of Civility. If you come and talk to me after, I might be able to potentially direct you to where maybe you could get like a digital copy of this, but it's out of print. This was written by two Green Berets, and if you know Green Berets, they're trained to be dropped off into indigenous places and train the locals up with everything from agricultural to security to everything. Like they are designed to go in and build infrastructure with local communities and stuff. So they wrote this book, and I'll just read you the subtitle, and it'll tell you exactly why this is one of my favorite books. How to Defend and Protect You, Your Family, Your Friends, Your Neighborhood, and America During a Disaster or Crisis. And they have, so when we start talking about like physical security and home protection plan, that's a whole other class when we get into, you know, actually defending your house, like hardening the outside and hardening the inside as well. You know, we talked about, you know, firearms training and all sorts of different things like that. These guys get into, let's just say, neighborhood defense. Really, really good. So come talk to me and I can share with you where you might be able to get that.
Hey, James, we've got somebody online who wants to know if you have a favorite brand of electronic door locks by chance.
Yeah, that's a tough question. We'll get right back over to you. That is a really tough question because certain brands will have different models that'll come out. But you know the competition game, right? You're always trying to come out with new models, this and new styles and blah, blah, blah. So what I might recommend to you right now might be at the tail end or discontinued already. But Schlage has tended, in my experience, to have some really good options. And it's more of like some features that you want to be looking for. So connectivity to your network in a way that is harder to compromise it. So it's not just some cheap, you know, Chinese connection that is really easy to penetrate and, you know, Wi-Fi scan it and open your garage door from my phone, which is kind of fun to show people because then they're like, how did you just open my doors? Because you bought really cheap shit. So Schlage tends to have some stuff that's on the lower price end of electronic door locks that's actually still really secure. Any security, any locks that you're getting, if I walk into any of your home, up to any of your homes and I look at the lock and I say like the door handle and stuff and I'm like, that's old installed. That's like really old. What happens is as the lock ages, those pins get slightly worn down. Does anybody know what bump keying is? Okay, so for security access, I carry a set of lock picks, these titanium lock picks in my, and I can't tell you how many people I've let back into their vehicles and their houses with these. Lock picking is not a hard thing to learn, and criminals, you would think like, well, criminals are lazy. Yeah, but not when it's like Doritos and Mountain Dew and they're up at 5 a.m. and they just finished their online gaming stuff and they're interested in something, so they go online and learn how to lockpick and then they want to try it out. You know, lockpicking is not that hard. Even easier is bump key. So there's some fairly good videos on this on YouTube. Let's just.
Bump key works.
Can everybody hear that?
And was able to
Okay.
clumsily mess with it. But what is the principle of how a bump key works? It's actually very simple. You have these keys, and the keys will have spacing and depths. This particular one has 6 cuts on it, and there'll be 0 to 9 depths. So it'll be from the top to the bottom.
Just ignore this techno babble. I want you to see when he opens the door with it. It is so easy.
And it'll be 0 to 9, which gives you 10. So what they do is they cut all 9s on there, which is the deepest. Okay. And these little bumps, when you pull it out about a 1/16 of an inch and you whack it with something, applying slight turning pressure, the tumblers all get hit at the same time and create and snap it. So this is the lock. This is it.
By snap, he doesn't mean break it. When you're lock picking, you lift each of those pins up to a different point on the pin where they all line up in a shear line, and that's what allows the lock to turn. So when you do it the bump key, instead of having to pick each pin, I'm oversimplifying it, but instead of having to pick each pin, you stick the bump key in, pull it out half click, and smack it with whatever, screwdriver, whatever, and it can open the lock just like
Typical cylinder. Okay. This would be the housing, which is up in the top. So, and I guess all of the brass part here would be up in the cylinder.
He's explaining
all of this.
I can send you guys this
part,
link.
yeah, just like you see in some combination. Bump key, which it creates a line. Okay. And when you snap them all simultaneously, it creates a gap. It snaps the top pin and the spring and will create a slight gap. Just for a split second, right? And allows it to turn. It's like playing pool. Okay, you know, you so in this all these go up, and if you hit it, actually normally this is where we their size. I was gonna give it a try and see if I can actually pull off the bump key. Sound good? You got it.
Okay, anyway, and watch him do it. It's literally, you stick it in and pull it out, smack it. So newer locks will have security pins in them. Instead of just your standard pins, they'll have security pins, which make them harder, if not impossible, to pick with a lock pick. You have to be really good to do it. And they're now pins that are resistant to bump picking. They have like little rubber bouncers and stuff. Anyway, so to answer that question a little bit more detail, like when you're looking for locks, look for some of those features that would have anti-picking, anti-bumping, things like that. And that's kind of some of again, these are just guidelines. You can message me directly and I can give you some more resources. Also in that article that we'll give you guys access to, there's information in there that you can jump to some links, watch some more stuff and get some more information. Okay.
What about weapons?
Okay, well, he said, what about weapons? Good question. So we have all of these psychological and physical deterrents around the property, right? The next phase of what we would be going into is family coordination, first of all, to have a security plan in place that if something were to happen and somebody were to get access into the house while people are home, what do we do? Where do we go? That's a whole nother 4-hour, discussion of certain principles that you would want to put in place. One of those things is physical, lethal force type of thing. And it's not something to be taken lightly. Some people are completely averse to it. Some people are very pro to it. So as far as that goes, yeah, I'm a very big believer that, the Second Amendment was put in the Constitution for a specific reason, to be able to protect against a lot of different threats. And it wasn't just, 4-legged threats in the outdoors. It's 2-legged threats, right? So Mother Nature and human nature. And so I'm a big proponent of that. But just what we...
Just so you know, you can always put signs outside, and it helps out really good. Like,
Let's talk about this real quick, and I'll come back to that.
Protected by guarded guns, trespass, and you might meet both of them. And, this one right here, this property is protected by a husband with a gun and wife with PMS. Guess which one is home?
So at these, what we normally, because this usually question comes, and I'm glad you brought this up, because there's something that we need to talk about with this. Especially this. Okay, look at this.
Go for it.
So it says, warning, no trespassing. We have guns and shovels. Now, if we lived in a different legal age, I would 1000% endorse this type of thing that says my bite is a lot worse than my dog's, or this gun is protected by the incorporation of Glock, or whatever, right? Like these things. We don't recommend, in our company, we don't recommend anybody utilizing signs like this, because it has become a really, like, it can be a one-way trip to jail. So now if we're under what we call WROL or martial law, if we have like a full societal breakdown, then that area of consideration gets way less of a concern, right? Looters, rioters, stuff like that. You have a ton of protections in place just by all the normal laws that are in place during an event like that. We saw that in Katrina a lot, and things like that, Hurricane Katrina. When it comes to your day-to-day stuff, like, your hardening of your home and stuff like that, getting, like, if you don't even have a security system, but you can order on Amazon security decals to put up on your windows and to put out on your lawn, and those are psychological deterrents. And those I do recommend, even if you don't have a security system. But I don't recommend, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it can get you in a lot of hot water. And a lot of people were like, oh, I'm going to put this, because I'm on Amazon, and it's like frequently bought with this security film and this door thing and this and that. It's like this sign that says you're going to, send somebody to their maker if they try to, this is the other one I hate too, is there's the one that says our neighbor's house has nicer stuff than ours. So I'm like, it's funny. But when it comes down to it, just the nature of you hardening your house, you also need to be aware that unintentionally you're going to be pushing crime to other people's houses. And that's okay. You put your mask on first, right, in a plane? Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that in just a second. In fact, let me come back to that. I want to hit your question, and then don't let me forget to come back to that, because there's a really good point. He said you're also attracting crime too. That's when we talk about technical issues. Overt versus covert, okay? Because you can, by doing certain things, you can attract more crime. Let me come right back to that. Point I want to make with, where was I? before I just got squirreled.
Weapons.
Right before weapons. Signs, warning signs. Yeah, just be aware of that. That putting warning signs on your house that are kind of like that. They're cool, they're funny. Oh no, unintentionally pushing crime to your neighbors. You just need to understand that as you harden your house, by nature, inadvertently, criminals are going to come to your house, see some of these deterrents and stuff, and they're not overt, right? They're covert, right? These are just, if any of your friends came over for a cocktail party or a game night or whatever, and they saw the big shoes on the front porch, they probably wouldn't even notice, to be honest. They probably wouldn't even notice any of these. Are they going to notice what kind of screws you have in your door? No, they're not going to notice any of this. Criminals will start to notice some of these things and realize that's kind of a hard target. I want to go find some easier free French fries from McDonald's. Okay. So firearms. Oh boy, that is, yeah. That's a separate class. But what I was going to say. Okay, the one thing I did want to say about firearms and weapons is, like when we teach our firearms classes, one of the biggest takeaways that a lot of the students say is they're like, wow, what I really learned was, like, we use the example of just because you go and buy a surfboard doesn't mean that you're a surfer. Like you go out and try to catch that wave, like your success rate is probably not going to be super high, right? Now, should you just not own a firearm because of that? No. But what you should do is always, some people want to go out and get the best and the greatest of firearm stuff and all the accoutrement that goes along with it and blah, 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 right? But then what they neglect to do is they'll end up with like 14 ARs, a ton of ammo, magazines, this, that, and the other, every, hot ticket item, but then they don't really go out and get some good quality, legit, because there's a ton of firearms instructors out there, but they don't get really good, legit firearms training. There's actually one of the best firearms instructors in America, if not in part of the globe, lives out in Eagle Mountain, Larry Mudgett with Marksmanship Matters. So, and very affordable as far as training goes. But if you're going to get into the firearm scene, go get some really good training. That's what I wanted to say about that. Your question was, or your statement was?
It tracks crime.
Tracks crime. So we've consulted with certain families that have a lot of money. So they're like, we are serious about preparedness. We want to get prepared. So we start talking to them. Okay, what have you done so far? Oh, here's our spreadsheet of what we've done. Okay, sweet. Let's start looking through it. Then we go out and do a house visit. And it's like, remember we talked about baseline in your neighborhood? I love that this is on wheels. But it'd be upside down because I didn't think of that ahead of time. Ah, that's a good point. If I would have thought about that, I would have just flipped it. Now I know. Knowing is half the battle. All right, so we talk about this is our house and our property, right? But then we have all these other houses in the neighborhood, right? So to your point, which is a fantastic point, if we start hardening this home visually, like bars on the windows, doing some really hardcore stuff, and none of the other places in the house in the neighborhood have that, under peace times, everybody's going to avoid our house. But anytime there's a civil disruption, that's the castle. So what's every criminal in the area going to be doing? They must have some really good stuff. And so what happens is you end up attracting and becoming a magnet. So keep that in mind as you start to harden your house. We do it in a way that blends into the rest of the neighborhood. Can't see the security film on the glass, right? Can't see the Katie bars behind all the exterior doors. Can't see the safe room that we put together inside the house for the family, right? So all of these things. There was another point I had with that. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. If you harden your house too visually, that happened a lot in like Argentina and stuff. And then when they had the financial collapse, and
We'll have ours.
what's that?
We'll have ours.
Yeah, like
Next
so
week.
next week. So if that ever happens in America and your house looks really nice and really fortified, then that can end up becoming a problem for you.
Another, backing up to locks and vulnerability, there's a person who had vehicles in their driveway. For vulnerability through the garage, they had vehicles in the driveway, they had remote controls on their visors.
Uh-huh.
There was a principal who pulls her car in the driveway, leaves her purse and her keys in the ignition, purse in the car, goes into her house. But someone comes along with the car in the driveway, finds the thing, opens up the garage door, finds that car open, has all the keys to the school. She's the principal. So not only vandalizes her home. So anyway, people need to be thinking, never leave stuff in your car in the garage.
Yeah.
Or if you do it in the driveway, don't put because they come and shine a flashlight and they see that remote control. They know they can get into your garage and they're halfway into your house.
Let's really rapidly talk about garages, guys, because this is another thing I don't want you to not know. So garages are one of the biggest areas that this is a sweet spot for me because I know I can penetrate a garage really fast and easy. On a garage, let's talk about a couple things. First of all, a lot of them have glass windows and stuff, right? So you can get up and look in and see what's in the garage. Second of all, accessibility. A lot of people will leave ladders outside and things like that. So if a criminal gets access to your property, finds a ladder, okay, now I've got access to second story windows that are likely not locked or likely easy to break into, things like this. In the garage, especially you guys that you asked about firearms, right? Where do a lot of people keep their firearms in the house? Consolidated, not in the garage, consolidated in a safe in the house. Oh, so we're good, right? Oh, man, we could talk about gun safes for an hour and I could dispel a ton of myths. Well, what is in the garage normally? Power tools, recip saws, crowbars, everything that I need. If I really want to penetrate a house and I've got to get in there, let's say it's to rescue a kid or something, like good. If I know I need to get access into that house and I can get access really quickly into the garage, I'm going to have likely a plethora of tools to then breach the actual home and whatever else is inside the home. I can get into a gun safe in just minutes. And guess what else? I can work in the house. When was the last time you heard somebody running a drill or a recip saw or a circular saw and you were like, oh my gosh, I wonder if somebody's breaking into that. No, it's like they're doing weekend projects, right? So I can get into a house and then if I can find their gun safe and stuff, because usually they're just out on display, you can get into that gun safe with as little as 2 screwdrivers, generally speaking, even though they spent like 10 grand on that gun safe. So point is you can get access to a lot of tools. So in my garage, I have a toolbox that's designed for construction sites. You know, the ones you see on the trucks, the orange, Knack toolboxes and stuff. Those are specifically designed to resist thievery on construction sites that are left unattended. And so I have one of those bolted to my garage floor that swings open and it has 2 recessed padlocks so you can't even get access to the padlocks on these things. It's like $200 at Home Depot. They actually make a better gun safe than most of the gun safes. It's what I used as a gun safe when I lived in Salt Lake, was that bolted to the floor upstairs with huge lag bolts this long from the inside. So gun safe, so I keep all my heavy duty pry bars, tool bars, recip saws, all the stuff that I don't want criminals to get access to, I keep them locked up in my garage. What else was what I was going to say with that? Getting access to the garage. Garage doors. Okay, so what does a garage door look like? It's got panels, right? Horizontal panels. You can go home and try this if you want this weekend. Go get yourself a coat hanger out of if you still have wire coat hangers maybe in the house. That's probably an antiquated thing, but I still have some for utility purposes. And all you have to do is put a V bend on it so it comes up like so, goes into a V, and then this kind of comes out here, right? And you stick that in between one of the top panels because there's gaps in it. It's not hard. Some of them have rubber if they're nice. All you have to do is slip that in there, push it forward as far as you can, and then slide it over. And what am I going to hit?
The pull release.
The emergency pull release lever. There's a little string that hangs down on almost all garages that has a little T-handle on it. You've seen it, right? It's designed so if you have to override the garage and lift it by hand, manual, or it gets jammed up somehow and the photo eye didn't work to stop it from closing on something, whatever, you can pull that and it will disengage the track, and then you can just raise the garage door by hand. All you have to do is slip that in there, hook that little string, pull it, the T-handle gets stuck, and then you just pull it in, clunk, unlocks it, and now you can just raise the garage door.
How dare they?
And most people wouldn't even bat an eye in a neighborhood, Most neighbors don't even know each other, for that matter. So that's one way to get in there. So how do you fix that?
Take the T off and roll.
Yeah, you can slide the T up, and where the last little knot is, just cut it there and take the T-handle off so it's just that. You can undo it all together.
How about leave the T-handle on, but just put a drop it loose so that it comes right off?
You could still catch on it. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of pressure, but that's a good thought. They actually sell a plate it's like a little shield plate that you can install that stays in front of that little hangy string thing, and so it prevents anything from trying to get at it. You can also zip tie it with a zip tie, so that if you do have to grab it and pull it down, you just have to use a zip tie that's going to break. So you want to test it. Put the zip tie that you think is going to work in there, and then pull it with your hand and see if you can break the zip tie So if you need to use it, you can, but if not, then somebody's not going to be able to pull it with just a coat hanger. That doesn't solve the whole problem though. So the whole problem is this, is that garage doors are one of the most insecure pieces on your entire property for getting into the house, even more so than glass and stuff, because they could just be silly. So if you're going to go on vacation, or, I mean, if you're really disciplined, ideally you would drive your car into the garage, shut the door, and then, you know how they have the little turn thing here? And you turn it and a bar kind of goes out from both sides into the side rails of the garage door. That locks it so it can't go up. These can be picked though, lock picked, because they're not very good locks. You can pick that and then open that. So what we do is we just have a padlock that just stays open, and then, you know, the side rails on your garage door have all these little holes in them, right? Like on the side of the garage door. So when the garage door shuts, you know, the door rolls down here. You just throw that padlock through the hole. You don't have to lock it. You just throw it through the hole, and now it's easy to just take it off and hang it there. You know, we put a little nail on the side of the wall and just hang the lock on that. But then that way, when the garage door is down, but now you can't use your automatic garage door from the outside. So this would be something you'd have to coordinate with your family, that every time, you know, and most people aren't disciplined enough to do that. But if you go on vacation, so we talk about Christmas, right, coming up. You go on vacation, Thanksgiving, Christmas, that's not a bad thing to do at all. Hell, you could stick a wooden spoon from the kitchen through there, and that would be pretty sufficient, as long as it doesn't slide out. Okay? Since we're speaking about that too, we need to wrap up. Since we're speaking of that too, you guys are going to be ordering presents from Christmas. You're going to get stuff. Boxes come in the mail, right? New TV that you just got because you've been waiting to buy. Well, what most people do, criminals love doing this, man. They will drive down streets and look at trash cans. Yeah. And they just look at trash cans like, oh, that's that new LG curved TV thing. I see the box sticking out of their trash can. So what does that house have? You would not believe when they catch criminals and ask them, well, why did you decide this house? They're like, they had a lot of good, a lot of good stuff. Because, how'd you know that? Man, their trash was overflowing with every toy known to man and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, last thing I want to talk about, and then let's wrap up. Just because we're talking about garages, and I want to talk about transition zones, since we didn't get to talk about it very much, but I want to teach you to think like a criminal. And this is a really big one. You went and got groceries. You were vigilant. You weren't on your phone. You know, you were kind of looking around. You loaded your groceries into your car, but you're still kind of keeping an eye out, because that's a transition zone. When you're loading groceries in a car, the big one is moms. What are you putting in your car usually when you're coming out? Yeah, your kid. And that's a big time when moms get attacked, is loading their kids in the car. Their focus is 100% on trying to, plus you're trying to, get that car seat in there just right. And like, I got to buckle it in that right. There's a lot of focus that goes into that. Well, when you get home, what also happens?
Reverse.
Yeah, everything's in reverse. So you kick the garage door up. Let's say you're vigilant, making sure nobody followed you home, this and that and the other. We teach, classes on all of this stuff, pursuit mechanics and stuff like this. So then you get to your garage home, you pull up your garage door, and you pull into your garage. Where's your focus, first of all, as you pull your car into the garage? Tennis ball hanging down. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not paying attention to to what's behind you. You're not checking your rearview mirror to make sure no one's like trying to sneak into your garage or follow you in, right? You're trying to pull your car in so that you don't smack the wall or the shelving or whatever else you have in there. So your focus is either forward or slightly to the sides, but mostly forward. That's where your focus is. Then you turn the car off and you're like, I'm in my house. I'm safe. The garage is the door's either starting to come down or you haven't even shut the door yet, right? So then you go to get out of the car. Well, that's one of the biggest transition zones. Criminals love that. You can slip into a garage so easily and generally hide really easily. In fact, the really good criminals know that as you're pulling in, there's all these blind spots on the vehicle, and as you're pulling in, you're usually covering up what a lot of people have on their porches now, which are really good actually, doorbell cameras, right? And so as your car's pulling in, they know they're just hiding behind this garbage can over here, or the corner of the garage, and as you start to pull in, as soon as that bumper starts to clear the garage, they know that they can just crouch down, just slip in by the passenger door, and then as you pull in, they walk in to the garage with you, drop on the ground, and slide under your vehicle. And now you have no idea that they're there. You close the garage door, you unload your groceries, you're taking them in and out, the door to your house is wide open, right? A lot of times they'll just hang out there and wait. So you know, for whatever they're going to do, if they're going to steal stuff or worse. So that's kind of start getting your head around penetration on houses and stuff. Sorry for the time over. Okay. 8 o'clock, a little after 8.
That's good because we started a little late.
Okay.
So 6 in the morning.
I told you there's a lot, right? And we didn't even, like, guys, we didn't even
No, I
scratch
just scratched
the surface.
seriously. There's so many fun
This
things.
is just me trying to tell you, like, what are the highest level things I could just drop in your lap so you can get interested in it. But
Yeah,
I'll
I
get
was-
you that article link for them.
Yeah, and I can get that out to everyone.
Yeah,
We'll put it on
and
the Thrivalist course for those of you who are members of the Thrivalist course, and that way you can download it as well. And I mean, there's so many fun things we could talk about.
Yeah.
I pulled this one up here. I don't know if you've ever seen this one. This is so for home defense. You can put a whole bunch of treadmills
This is for zombies,
around the
right?
house for zombies, and they'll never be able to get in. They'll just keep walking forever, and so it's a good way to do it as well. And
It's a good slide.
yeah, it's a good one. I was thinking about just something to pass along. I remember working with some police officers, and they talked about when people do get into the house, almost like probably 80-90% of the people, 80-90% of you probably hide your stuff under the bed, under the mattress, or in your closet, or in a drawer. And if you want to protect or hide something that's really valuable. And so he said, don't do that. Find something a little bit more creative to protect things they want to steal. And then the other thing I thought was really interesting, and this was done, it was a psychology experiment that was taught to me by a police officer as well. And he talked about how if you're getting attacked in public, what can you say to get people to notice that you're in trouble and get them to help you? A lot of people say fire or whatever else, right? Stop it, anything like that. He said none of those work. Most people think, oh, they're just playing or whatever else. There's one word that worked every single time. Can you guess what that word is? Nope. Help was another one, just like fire or stop it. Like people think you're playing. There's one word that worked every single time. No, that didn't work either. There's enough of those people too. But it's super simple. It's the word no. Nobody gets that confused. You say no, no, no. Nobody gets it confused. You use the word no. And so if any of you are ever getting attacked, just remember that word, if that makes sense. But anyways, this man right here, super smart, and I love talking to him, and we have a lot of fun together. So we'll plan on having him back. Does that sound good? Okay, awesome. James, thank you again for being here.
Yeah, man.
You're awesome, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Keep an eye out on emails. We're transitioning to a new email from Thrivalist, the big brand that we're promoting. There's a good chance we're going to have Netflix here in about 2 or 3 weeks. We're waiting to find out to do some recording for a show that we're going to be a part of, and then also another show in January for the Netherlands, I believe, right? The Netherlands. And so we've been getting some pretty good attention. And so I think we're going to be able to help a lot of people. Our goal is to help, again, tens of thousands of families. 10,000 families get prepared, but that takes millions of people to be able to help before we get those 10,000. So anyway, anything you can do to help us in our mission, please let us know. And thank you again for being here, you guys. Thank you, man. Good job. Yeah, no problem. Really? Oh yeah, they love it.
We probably need to do a follow-up.
Let's do it. I think that'd be good.
Thanks for that, by the way. Appreciate it. So nice
Yeah.
seeing you again.
Good to see you too.
After Cafe
Was
Rio.
that pretty fun?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm glad you came.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
We kind of took a little bit of a break because we attended the virtual it was like the food dehydrator, or sorry, the freeze dry.
Yep.
And that was with her mom, and then her mom passed away.
Like a week after that.
And so we were like,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
so it took a little bit of a break, but we've been setting aside food storage money, and so we come in a few times to do all that stuff.
Getting back.
Question: do you think there's going to be a Black Friday thing? Are you gonna do
Here?
something?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So my workers, they've been wanting to do something, and I just said, well, tell me what it is.
Cool.
So I think they're going to put a bunch of stuff on clearance. I don't know. So why don't you ask them? Go over there and partner now.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Good to
Yeah,
see
I'll see you around.
Take care.